You're clear.
And we're clear. Yay. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe everyone moved to Spain. Maybe we need to take a look at that. Seriously, I'm like, yeah. Malta just
Build on Tucker Island.
Yeah, Malta doesn't fit with me anymore. All of a sudden, it's become very, very apparent, very sudden that there's just this. Like I say, the pros and the cons. You write your list with your pros and your cons, and all of a sudden, the pros start all sliding over into the cons side of it, and they change, and you go, and you find yourself bitching more than you are happy with stuff. So yeah, I don't know. There's something there.
I feel the same way, Danny. Every day I wake up, I'm like, fuck, I'm still here.
But Danny, I live in Spain. You know, I have to switch off the television. I can't stand it because they're only bitching about each other. Then there is a politician in Andalusia saying something about people that are looking for the bones and rests of the Franco regime's massacres. And they say, oh, that's just goes with me as if something would slide upon me. As if I and they felt so offensed, and they were going about this stuff. So I tell you, that in Spain, not only it's all over the place. Not only in
Listen,
Spain,
I'll say this first. The only reason I bring up Spain, because I know it's just as corrupt. Part of the EU, it's just as corrupt. It's all the exact same bullshit. Is that the only reason is the fact of there is so much property available for very, very inexpensive compared to everywhere else on the fucking planet. The kind of thing where you can just, like I say, just set up and just, you got to play the game. You have to play, you're going to have to pay your taxes, and you're going to have to play with the local politicians and etc. It's just the fact of it's one of the few places left for me in Europe where you can actually afford to buy a piece of property. Where you can actually, and that's the only reason. Honestly, Spain as a, other like this lovely climate down in the south of Spain, much like Malta here, I can definitely, I've got to be a little warmer. I can't do North American type winters anymore. It's the difference of how, like, when you put all the pieces and you go, okay, we want something that's a little bit better climate. Property has to be inexpensive. It has to be still accessible, like easy to get in and out of, to travel, etc. That's pretty much the criteria. Is the only reason why Spain comes up on the board. That's it. Yeah. I know Spain is fucked. Politically, financially, it is fucked.
I like the idea of Spain. I like the idea of Spain because back in the Spanish Inquisition, my family was kicked out.
Oh.
Nina's like, I'll just take this back.
I'll just take this back, thanks.
And we think part of my family was converted because I have some names that sound a bit Jewish or yes, Jewish. So There
They were
seems
converted.
to be, yeah. But it's
They didn't
usually,
like us or living in harmony.
you know, but here are so many places that have Jewish descendants that sometimes I had this idea: what if Jerusalem wasn't there in the Near East, but here in the West of the Mediterranean?
Mercedes, there are people who talk about that. There's several theories on that out there.
Also because of the what is going on with Maria Magdalene and in the south of France.
Oh, yes.
And this way, Camino de Compostela, with Jacob. Why is Jacob there in Spain?
I know. Like I've read a lot over the last 10 years, especially. I've read a lot of different theories about where Jerusalem actually was, and it wasn't in Palestine.
Some say Moscow, you know.
And some say Turkey too. Yeah, that Jerusalem may have actually been someplace more in northern Turkey, etc. So there's all kinds of theories about that. All kinds.
But I'm with Megan. Like I'm still here. How come I'm still here? Like, come on. Like, for me, 2015 was like at the end of 2015 was when for me holy crap, this Mandela thing hits me at the end of the year. I'm like, whoa, okay. I'm going into somewhere I've never been before.
You want to change? There you go.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's interesting. The Moorish-Basque connection is a very interesting one in Spain. And when you go through the history of Spain and you look at the Moorish connection, even in the architecture, there's a huge connection there. And the Basques are an interesting people because they're not Spanish. If you ever call a Basque Spanish, they'll get really pissed at you. It's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And that's part of the thing that I do love about Spain is that it's got this really interesting history. And there's so many megalithic ruins in Spain that have never been looked at, never been excavated, historically speaking, and you just go, oh. I was reading an article and it was someone traveling through the Basque area. It was one of those traveler type blogs, and it's somebody who's been, spent 2 years traveling all through areas of Europe and kind of stopping for 2 and 3 months in each place, so really kind of getting into a place. And he came across a fountain. And it was like up in the mountains, some little tiny village. And he said, like, the tile work on this fountain was exquisite. Like he said, but didn't fit with anything he'd seen. Like, didn't fit with architecture, didn't fit with anything. And he started asking the people about it. And they had all these really interesting stories about, oh no, this came from so-and-so, it was somebody who came up from North Africa, at like 200 BC, and he had a palace here, but it was destroyed, but this is the last piece that was left of it. And they have no idea who the guy, but he said, like, this fountain still existed, and he said it was just in the middle of a square. Everyone was like watering their animals and pulling the water out to give to the horses, etc. He says, and yet this was an incredible piece of history that you can't find out about in history books.
And it's natural spring water that doesn't stop flowing, right?
And it's natural spring water that never stops flowing. And that's what they say. That's why the people, even though they have running water into their houses in the village, they still come and get buckets full of water out of the well to cook their food, to give to their animals, because it's pure spring water. Yeah, no, trust me, if there were other places in Europe that were a little warmer, I'd definitely consider it. I was looking into Serbia after Kuba was talking about Serbia being so inexpensive as well. But yeah, but it's just too cold. It's just too cold in the winter. I don't know.
Yeah, but hasn't there been like hasn't there been like winters in that where in the Mediterranean where it's got snowy in North Africa? So Spain would be included, right?
Well, it depends on where you are, because again, you have all the mountains, right? So you have these mountain ranges. So I've got a friend of mine who just teased the fuck out of me because I put a post up in the World School group on Facebook asking about if there's any specific homeschooling groups in Andalusia, because that was the one area that I was kind of looking at. And she saw it, and she's like, haha, because she lived here in Gozo for many years. They just moved to Spain about 8 months ago. She's like, so what you asking the questions for? And we got chatting, and she's like, yeah, I heard you guys just got nailed. Like, you had a horrible winter. She says, we never dropped below 18 degrees here all winter long.
Oh, nice.
And just the way they are, their valley, up side of a mountain type thing. And you know what it is. When you have mountains, you get weird weather patterns. She says, we never dipped below. We had a couple of nights where maybe it went down to 13 degrees Celsius. But she says, like, we had gorgeous, glorious fucking weather all winter long. And we kept seeing the Gozo weather going, oh, my God, we told them all to move with us.
Yeah, Danny, I remember going for the apple picking and also the maple syrup, like going to see how they make maple syrup.
Yeah. That was like class trip every
yeah,
class Canada. Trip. You got to go out and see the maple syrup being made. Mercedes, she is in. If you're on the mountain, remember, I think I'm in mirror view right now. So there's Malaga, and then slightly farther along the coast is Almeria. She is kind of 30 minutes from the coast, almost about halfway between, maybe slightly closer to Malaga. And she's just in. She says they're a 30-minute drive from the coast. They're up into one of the mountains, and they're in it like a little valley. And she says like it's green and lush. And she said they had the most mild winter, flowers, the whole bit. So, yeah, like it depends. And I know that from Canada, it's the same thing too, where you can go in one area and have brutal cold. But if you just get into like a nice little havened area, some of the little valley type things, it's much, much milder.
And how is their summer?
Sorry, hun, say again?
How is their summer?
Good. Hot, nice. I like hot summers, too. You have to understand. Dry and hot, that's the way I like it. As long as there's a beach, that you have to remember, I do live in Gozo, right? So 40-degree summers with no rain for 4 months is the norm here. Everyone else in my family hates it, but I actually kind of like it. But then I'm sitting here shivering right now, and it's probably only 16 degrees, but I'm still shivering at the moment. I'm like holding my hands going, I should have had my gloves out here because my hands are fucking freezing.
Danny, now there's a Nevada Triangle. They've lost over 2,000 planes in that area.
What?
Yeah. And also like other weird stuff. Yeah, I've never heard. I know the Devils.
I'll have to look at it.
I've heard of Devil's Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, never the Nevada Triangle. So that's new for me.
There we go. Who knows? Lots of weird shit takes place down Nevada way, so you never know what could be going on. Maybe someone's opened a giant portal to somewhere else.
Yeah, I've always fantasized about living in High Brazil, but I can't ever find it.
Yeah, you and me both, darling. And Avalon. That was one of my other ones as a kid. I loved Avalon. I read every story about Avalon. High Brazil. We could turn that into Unfuckers Island if we could just find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it was Sesame Street. Just tell me how to get there.
Yeah, no, I know where Sesame Street is, and you couldn't pay me enough to go there.
I used to be scared of Big Bird. I didn't like Big Bird. He scared me.
I was bored. I don't know. I found Sesame Street when I was a kid to be really boring. My mom would put on, like I said, when I was little, it was down Cape Breton Island. There was one channel. And at
Yeah.
around noon, I guess it was like 11 in the morning. Sesame Street used to come on. I don't even remember what channel it was, Megan. And literally, my mom would be like, "Here, watch Sesame Street," and I'd be like, "Oh, really?"
I was never into Sesame Street either, but I did like The Count. That's the only one.
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
I actually
That
like
one.
Oscar. Maybe that says something about my personality. I was an Oscar
I
fan.
liked Animal. He was a crazy drummer.
Yeah. The
that
Muppet
was a
Show
Muppet
came out,
Show.
Animal was one of my faves.
And The Count.
Muppet Show was better, way better.
Yeah, I loved
Miss
it.
Piggy. And
My favorite Sesame Street was a little typewriter guy. They would come walking along. I love that little typewriter guy.
Mercedes, because you are in Europe, you can do a bank transfer. You can just send me a bank transfer. So just send me a message and tell me what you want to order, and I'll give you the amount and our bank transfer details, and you can just do a bank transfer. In Europe, bank transfers are really, really easy. So that's not a problem. It's when people don't have PayPal or they can't get their fucking PayPal to work, which is just about everyone at the moment in North America. That's when we have like serious issues. I need a new payment fucking system on my site. It's fucking killing me. It's killing me.
that's why some of us have to come over and
That's
shop
right.
in person.
That's right. You got to come over, shop in person. I'll lay out my wares for you, and you can just pick what you need to come. There you go. Most definitely. Yeah, I got a bug. I definitely have a movement bug. And I mean, I have a movement bug all the time. That's why I keep moving all over the world. I can't help myself. And like you guys said, that's probably in my chart too. They all nod their heads. Yeah, it's in your chart. But yeah, I really feel it. Really feel it. Like the time, gotta get some fucking land, gotta start doing something not computer based. Do you know what I'm saying? Like even with my own products, it's like having my shop online is great, except what happens when online, or if online goes down, then you're kind of, I'm like, no, I need a place where I'm set, where I've got, where you can work physically towards community, etc. Yeah.
I've got a feeling you're going back into prepper mode, Danny. Into prepper mode, but I need my own place, and I need to grow my own food, and I need to do something
there's a part
tangible.
Of that too, but there's a part of it that's not prepper mode, because obviously, you know me, I am an old school prepper, so there's always that little bit. But there's more to it. There's the community for me.
Yeah.
Building community, getting people together who can.
I got given a CB radio this week. My old regular taxi driver had to send his taxi back because it was getting unregistered as a taxi to convert it into a private car. So he gave me his radio. Now I've got a CB radio. Yay. That's
very interesting. That's something I'm actually, the prepper side of me is actually looking at getting myself a ham radio. Just because I have those tendencies. But it's the whole community thing, getting people together and teaching. Teaching is huge. Like teaching, putting courses together, having people come over and learning permaculture, and people learning, like how to make your own natural skincare and how to prepare real foods, and how, like, whatever it is that the people who come can teach. Spreading the knowledge, like people come learn and then take the knowledge back home with them, and they teach others. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to get the information and spread it out. But it feels to me like it's the time where 2015 was the time of the internet to spread all this awareness using online methods, like news shows and talk shows, etc. Now it feels like we're moving into a physical, where we actually have to be meeting up in face-to-face and talking to people and spreading the knowledge that way. That's the shift that I feel coming in now. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
Absolutely.
Do you guys get that? Like, does that make sense?
Yes.
I feel that there's a crumbling of the old way of doing things, and there's a new way of doing things that's going to be coming in. I mean, I feel that because with what I'm seeing with all the corruption just coming down, it just feels like there's this falling away. Like it's like a facade of a building just, crumbling, and some of us are right there, and we really need to move out of the way, and let it just fall.
But it's actually not going to a new thing, but it's going back to our roots where we were before.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I was just going to say. It is that going back to, how did you teach people before? You brought people into your kitchen and you showed them how to make a loaf of bread. You grandmas shared the knowledge with the children, the grandchildren, the nephews, the nieces, the other people in the village. You always had certain people in your town, your village, who had their pieces of knowledge. And if you needed to know about fixing something, you went to Joe over there because he's the guy who has all the knowledge. And if you needed to know where you should dig a well, you went and talked to Mary over there because Mary is a dowser and knows exactly where you're going to find the water. It's going back to, and I don't even want to say reverting, because reverting is the wrong way, because we take with us the knowledge that we've gained here, but we're going back to where it's applicable, where it works. It's like we almost had to go on this journey to gather up all these pieces so that when we go back to nature in our roots, we're coming back to it at a different level, with a different comprehension, with a different way of looking at it. And for me, it's kind of like one of those things when we talk about Europe, right? And you talk about Spain. Why are all these villages abandoned in Spain? Because everyone wants to move to the big city. They want to get a job. They want to become an IT guy. They want to go to university, etc. So they leave that behind because this old way of living no longer suits them. But in a way, we have to go into those big cities, like, if you want to call it that, what we've been doing for the last 15, 20 years, to then gain the comprehension of why we need to go back to these small places and start building and building the foundation.
It's a natural evolution.
Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Like if there's a void and people vacate somewhere and it becomes a void, it's a physical space that's a void, there will be something to fill the vacuum.
Yep.
So if they don't want to be in that place because they need to experience another stage of their development or their evolution, we also want to develop our evolution so we can fill the void.
Yep.
Could I ask a question of the three girls and Danny too, for that matter?
Of course.
Please? Thank you, dear.
And good morning, Maury.
Good morning. This was all astrology based in the stars, at least the conversation earlier. I'm wondering, from that perspective, do the stars, as you girls investigate them, read them, and all of that, do you get a sense that it's a going back to former days, like the old only, or is it like Amina just said? Is it a what was the word you used, Amina? It's not evolution. Yeah, to something that we haven't done before.
Maury, can I speak a little bit about it?
Yes.
Sure.
I have an aspect exactly about that. I have the conjunction of Uranus and Pluto opposite Saturn. And it's exactly that. But I want to make changes. It's a thing that's ingrained in me ever since I was a child. I wanted to look deep inside of things, knowing how they work. but not to destroy them, but to make them better, to rearrange things.
Yep.
That's it. And it's this aspect that Uranus, Pluto opposing Saturn. Knowing how things work, to rearrange them. It's how I interpret this aspect in my chart. And I think as they are outer planets, many have got this aspect in their chart. It only depends where this aspect were in their chart.
I understand that really, and I'm wondering if there's that's an individual case of, you know, maybe a whole bunch of other people have it too. I don't know.
That's a whole generation, Mari.
And we never did get back to the generational question. We'll have to talk about that next
time.
Yeah, totally, Maury. I think there's a going back but going forward. So once we get past this whole Capricorn stage with Saturn and Pluto conjunction in that, which is really constricting, and we can see the corruption and the mass corporatocracy, we're going to have Pluto going into Aquarius, and that's like the new age.
Is that like
you
that
look,
January thing you were talking about before?
No, that's the grand sort of conjunction when it's going to peak at its probable worst. But I think the new generation coming are going to just live a completely different way.
I think you're right, Jules. And I think it's all about ebb and flow and push and pull, because if you think about it, everything in nature does that. It's all cyclical, right? Like we push forward and then we pull back and integrate. We push forward and we pull back and integrate. And when we integrate what we learn going forward, then we, you know, bring the old ways with us. And I think that like the Capricornian, Saturnian structures that, you know, the powers that be are now, they are trying to take our past and our heritage away from us because they don't want us to pull back and remember and reintegrate. And I think it's not about going forward and it's not about going back. It's about marrying them together, because we're always moving forward, but we can't forget our roots, right?
Exactly. So I think, you know, the next generations are going to look back on this generation or this time as a very dark time, as a very restricting kind of time where everything's been segmented and compartmentalized.
That's my basic thought throughout my entire life. Ever since I was little, I have thought we are in the worst era, right? We are in the worst era of our human history, aren't we? And I've known that since I was really, really young.
Yep.
And I felt like, why am I here? Why am I in this era? What am I doing here? I don't belong here. This is like, I'm not supposed to be in this type of world. This is the opposite of me. But yeah, I'm here. So I'm like, all my life I've been wondering why. And I think I'm maturing at the time when it's going to transition out of this. And I'm a really like old person in a way.
Yeah.
I resonate with old things, ancient things, and I don't resonate with anything that is brought forward throughout this past, since the 70s. I'm born in 71, and it's since 71 that all this shit has happened. And why am I born in it? You know, why am I born at the beginning of it and witnessing it all? There must be a reason.
You know, Amina, I feel like when people look back at this time, they're going to look at us as a bridge, like bridging that awful time into the new. Like we are like a living bridge. And I completely resonate with what you were saying. Like, I remember being a little girl and reading like Anne of Green Gables or Little House on the Prairie and stuff like that. And something in my heart that I was just too young to really know, I yearned for that. I'm like, why can't it be like that now? And I'll drive somewhere and I'll see like, you know, uninterrupted nature. And I'm like, yes, this is what we need more of. Less skyscrapers, More
Yep.
like more of this. Like we need more
Yes.
real things.
Yep.
I remember going to school on the London Underground when I was about 12, and I passed all the industrial buildings and the big tower blocks, and I was going from Acton all the way to Wimbledon. This is like my journey to school. And my tears were rolling down my face as I was looking out of the window, because this is not the world I want. I wanted more trees, and I wanted more people living on the land, not towered up in shoeboxes like animals. And
Like
you know,
animals.
what's going on with all of this? Yeah, like we're in it's like some science project that I found myself in, but I'm not supposed to be here. But only when I'm older and I'm like at an age where I sense something futuristic. I sense the future is not like my misty annuals, which used to get me really upset. Somebody gave me those comic books in an annual, you know, the hardback annuals that I used to get. And it was the Misty comic series. And they were all about the year 2000 plus, you know, 2030. And it was just mechanical space engineered type of world that they pictured. Yeah, and I was like, this is no, I don't want to live. I don't want to live to this age. I don't want to grow up to that. But now I'm here in this age, and I've got a sense that the future is actually more organic, and it's more wiser, and it's more holistic, enveloping the essence of what was traditionally there. You know, the knowledge, the depth, the spirituality of it. And I see now, you know, this is like, I'm getting a glimpse of it. And I see now that might be when I'm an old lady that this starts really kicking in. But, you know, I might be one of those people that just says, look, you know, we've got to bring this forward. I don't know. That's like my whole life has been moving towards something like that.
It's so funny because in the last 15 years, I spent the last 15 years of my life, especially, actually about 25 years if I really looked at it, saying I've continuously moved farther and farther away from the cities. Sometimes you have to move back. So when I came from Thailand, I moved back into Toronto, but I lived out in the west end of Toronto in Bloor West Village, which was kind of like a village within the town. And then as we've spread out, Nick and I is like, you know, like we got out Whitby way, like on the far, far east. And then we went out Brantford, and then we left and we went to Morocco, and then Morocco we were in Tangier. But then we quickly, you know, moved out of Tangier and moved into like off to one of the little tiny towns on the seacoast. And it was the same thing. We went to Australia to go to like the big cities. No. I literally hid out. And the little town, it's just gone right out of my head now, the name of the little town that was closest to Nimbin where we used to go grab groceries. I loved it because it was quaint. There was no buildings. Do you know what I mean? Like it was all like you went down the shopping street, and it was all little independent shops, and there were no big brand name stores. I liked it. And it's like same thing now as I didn't come back to Malta. I came to Gozo, which is the smaller island, you know, and it's like, just keep trying to move farther and farther out from those big city gray towers. Ugh.
Hey, Danny.
Yes,
Danny.
darling.
Yeah, on that subject, what I mean is that I understand that very well. The problem is I see myself as being on the other side of this. I don't plan on leaving before this shit happens. And of course, you guys know I'm a little bit older than most of, well, all of you actually, by a good 20 years, if not 30. So actuarially, I ain't supposed to make it, you know, in this world that much longer. Hell, 25 years from now, I'll be over 100 years old. That ain't right. And I plan on being here. So that kind of...
come on, Marie. They'll come out with the technology where you could last another 2.
No, I ain't gonna do no technology shit. I'm telling you that, Earl. But seriously, I plan on being here. I've always known I'm gonna be here to see the other side of this stuff. And I'm 76 years old right now. I'll be 77 this year. Now, like I say, most people my age are walking around in walkers and on crutches and shit. And I'm hiking through the deserts with somebody 25 years younger than me. You know,
Hey, Maury.
Yeah.
I've been digging a lot into the like bigger, grander cycles of astrology, like the Yuga cycles.
Thank you.
And they say, like, one of them is like Graham Hancock, like a bunch of sources that are digging into it. They think that thereabouts 2025 is when we finally leave the Kali Yuga, which is like kind of the bottom where we have been. So there's 4 major parts of the Yuga cycle, and I've got some little notes on it. So right now in the Kali Yuga, our average height, they have it in cubits, but I did the math, like we're about 5.5, 6 feet tall, right? And our average lifespan is 100 years. Well, we're going to move back up into the Dwapara Yuga, and our average lifespan will be 1,000 years.
Huh.
And we're going to get bigger. I don't know how quick it happens, like with the transition, but I've always kind of felt that. Like, I remember when I was a kid, like hearing these, we used to be giants and this, and I'm like, no, I don't feel like we live as long as we should. And I've been finding like these correlations of that. As we move out of this Kali Yuga, our lifespans are going to get longer.
Well, on that one, Megan, I listen to a lot of people along the way too, and when they start, experts in various fields, including astrology, by the way, and they're all as soon as they start talking the 2030s, 2040s, 150 years in the future, 75, there's something internal with me that says no, they're wrong. They're putting it off too far. I, honest to God, think it is coming that soon.
Yep.
I can't prove it, obviously, and I don't have, something to fall back on and say, look here, there, or the other place, like these conjuncts in the sky you guys talked about. But internally, I feel it's true. And I just wanted to share that with you folks, that maybe from my, limited perspective, but I still have validity when I speak somewhat. I feel that it's a lot sooner than most people seem to think in this world. This really could go that soon. That's why I keep bringing up that 2020 thing, because that really, when you mentioned that a couple of meetings ago, that hit me like a gigantic gong bell.
I've got a book right here that's talking just about that, and everybody focuses on 2012 for the Mayan calendar. It's so much more of that. Like, I showed the girls a screenshot from this book. Like, it is crazy. Like, the Mayans say that from a point in like the mid of the 1980s to just before 2020 is when we're through like this darkest period, when we go through this dark rift shift. That lines up with the last Saturn-Pluto cycle to the next one. It actually lines bang on with the eclipse cycle that kicks off the big conjunction. And then this whole thing of the Kali Yuga ending, and there's big correlations between the Mayan calendar and the Yugas, with the Yuga cycle we're in now ending in 2025. Well, that corresponds with Aquarius and Pluto kind of anchoring in together. That's the new. So is that when the age of Aquarius really anchors in, when Pluto moves into Aquarius and we start moving out of the Kali Yuga into the next one, and we start seeing longevity and returning, going back to go forward kind of thing, and just dismantling all this bullshit? Makes you wonder.
Well, it makes me, my feeling is that that's accurate, as opposed to just a mental thing. I mean, mentally, I can go along with that completely, what you just said. But internally, I got an equivalent by affirmation on that, for what it's worth. I just don't feel that it's that far down the road, and it's not going to be going back to a glorified version of the 1850s either. It's more that evolution thing that Amina was talking about, something that we haven't experienced before. And no, we can't at this point describe it, because we don't have a basis to draw upon except the past, which is what we end up doing all of the time, the glorified past, the bucolic past that we all wish it used to be. But history, it really wasn't that way for most people.
And as they say, this is a dark, confusing time, and like you said, we know it's coming, but we can't quite see it. To read from the book here, to many people, this in-between time of transition will appear unstructured and confusing, with the past practically complete and the future still to be born.
Yeah,
Like
well,
we are in and the Mayans, I don't know if it'll come up clear on my screen, but that's like the way that the Milky Way looks. And they call it like the womb of the Great Mother and the dark rift. Like we're literally galactically being like in those last final like pushes of like labor into rebirth. So we know it's coming, we just don't see it yet.
that
Do you
was
think-
my whole point. Yeah, we can't describe what's the future, but we can already feel it, but we don't have the ability, except maybe through this astrology thing, which is a cool way for me. And I don't mean to diminish it, but from my perspective, I have no knowledge of astrology like you guys do. But when you talk, I can sit back and I can understand what you're saying without understanding. You say conjunct or whatever the hell and all that stuff. That has no meaning to me personally. But when you start talking English again, I'm right with you. It's like me listening to a mathematician, for crying out loud. He thinks in numbers and equations and shit, but when he starts talking in English, I can comprehend what the hell he's talking about.
You should hear these three privately. They will chat for an hour, and it's like, could somebody break that down into English for poor old Danny who doesn't understand?
Yeah, Maury too, for that matter.
Jules, did you say Maury has Neptune conjunct his sun?
Yes.
So Maury, you just have a knowing. Like when you know, you know.
You know, you're
Like you are
connected.
connected. Yeah.
Well, I know
Totally
I'm connected.
connected.
That I know too. I've known that for probably ever since Judy died. I knew that for sure about 2 weeks afterwards. I actually knew it the day it happened, but I knew it in English and in a mental construct that I knew that was right, and it's been that way ever since. That's 9 years ago, literally. But it took that.
I have the same aspect. I have exactly the same. My Sun and Neptune are 7 seconds apart from each other. So they're really, really tightly close. It's the tightest aspect I have. And I feel as if I'm not really part of this world in some way. I feel like I'm part of a bigger understanding that's not really part of this physical world. Like I can walk right through it. Like walking through a market from end to end and not really looking at anything. Just focused on what's out there.
I know what you
mean. And I get it. I really.
I understand that. Right? I really do. That sounds like the way I do business in the world.
It's almost like you're walking through the ocean of consciousness. Like you're getting glimpses of everything else.
It's pretty freaky, and believe me, I don't meet many people that express that kind of attitude.
Stop. You don't? Can you stop?
Anyway, that was my point. I think it's going to, for Danny in particular, I think it's going to be a lot sooner than most
Hold on, I'm just going to mute.
That's okay. Than most experts claim. And secondly, I don't think it's going to be going back. I think it's going to be going forward to something we haven't quite been able to describe, but we're already feeling.
And I'm absolutely feeling it.
Literally.
It's like the old put new wine into old wine skin kind of thing where, it doesn't really work. Like, but I've also been thinking, like, since the 1980s, we've been in this holding pattern where we haven't really moved anywhere. Like, we haven't really moved forward, but we really haven't moved back. We've just been in this stuck position, because we haven't changed our styles. We haven't really changed
even fashion
technology. Yeah, it's like we've been making small
If you told me that
no
Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were still in power. Yeah, if you told me Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were still in power, I would not bat an eyelid, because it is like they still are. What they started is still the same shitty story for everyone. It's nothing. It's just everyone has come along, has just performed the same old shit. In fact, they've knotted it up even more.
Yep.
And they've tied us down, and we are like real prisoners on this planet now. Everything they started, everything to do with getting us to be at the bottom. Everything. It's not changed. It's got worse, if anything. And if those cords are cut and those ties are untied and broken, I think the release is going to be at first very disorientating. Sorry, disorienting. I don't know that word. Anyway, but it is about time. It feels like it's ripe, but I don't know how long the fruit of this takes to ripen. I know the fruit is there, but I don't know how long it takes to ripen. But I feel it. I can almost taste it.
Smell it.
Yeah.
See it.
Yeah.
It's
just.
Yeah. And I agree with what Maury said. All these people that talk about, so even going into, like, for example, all the pole shift stuff, people talk about, oh, this and that and the other, and the catastrophe cycles, etc. Whatever. A lot of them talk, and they do. It's the same type of thing. It's like this change, and let's just call it a polarity shift, not pole shift, but a polarity shift, where everything suddenly reshifts itself, because that's what we're talking about. And all these people are always like, oh, well, in the year 2047, or, and it's always this 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, etc. And I was listening to one guy talk. It was a few weeks ago. And he was being interviewed, and he was talking about pole shift. But again, we'll switch that to polarity shift. And he went to say 7 or 8 years, and he literally came out and said 7 or 8 weeks. And then he backtracked. No. I mean, not weeks, years. And I was like, no, you already said it. That was your gut. Your gut came through and said 7 or 8 weeks. And I was like, that's my mental thing. So that was end of February. So I don't know, I like at the very end of February. So that was my whole thing. It was like, when I hear people make those kind of, we all fuck up with our words. But that kind of a slip up, the way he said it, I was like, no, because that's, my feeling has been like, it's very intense. Right now, it's very, very intense. It feels tangible. And so many of us feel it. And that's why every time I hear someone say 10 years from now.
7 or 8 weeks is that time when I told you that Mercury is entering Aries, but it can't just be that.
Like I said, I don't do dates. I don't do dates, and I don't do, because we all know what happens every time you set a date on something. But it was more or less not the fact that he spoke an exact time frame, is that where he was trying to say years, it came out as weeks. So take it, instead of like something that's like still so far away, it's that close. It's literally tangible.
Could I add something? It's trying to combine what Earl was talking about and what Amina was talking about in terms of the progression and how society has changed. Again, I have a perspective, excuse me, a little bit longer than some of you, but I was an adult in the 60s. And let me tell you, the way it was leading up to when Kennedy got shot was one way of looking at the world. That's the old way, after World War II and the Great Expansion and suburbia and all of that stuff I watched. And then I went in the Air Force for 4 years, from 64 early to 68. And then where was I? I was in fucking Detroit, Michigan, which when I came back the summer before, they had tanks on the streets. That's if you know your history. America burned. It went across the country, and it peaked in Michigan, in Detroit. From 67 onward, that was the quote hippie revolution years. That was the volatile time in this country. And I went back to frickin' college, for Christ's sake, amongst the people 5 years younger than me, and they were all. I had done my thing, they were doing their thing, and I was in the middle of their thing then. But Amina's point about 1980 with Thatcher and Reagan is very, very true. I look at that and I say she's right. It wasn't like the opening of a new age at all. It was like the closing down.
Closing down. Yep.
And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And then 2001 occurred, and holy shit, the world flipped again in a worse way of more restriction. And now we see where we are today. Well, the way you said that is exactly perfect because it's accurate. But leading up to it, when Kennedy got shot, was like a demarcation point in the way the world did its business. Now, we didn't see it as such. We looked at it as an isolated incident and all that stuff. But stepping back away, that was like the systems beginning their real serious clampdown. And then, of course, there was reaction. That's the late 60s. And then the 70s was kind of a time of flux. But what happened in 1980? We get Reagan. And although it wasn't like, well, you guys know what happened. You were all floating around by that time, and you know it from your own perspectives. I don't have to put words to it. But I agree with Amina's point, and I just wanted to give a little background on that. And then World War II was a big change too, because prior to that, most of the world was freaking, except in the major cities, was rural.
Yep.
After World War II, they built everything, and it took them 15 to 20 years to do it.
The Marshall Plan.
Yeah, absolutely. They did it in Europe. They did it in America. They did it all over the Western world. And by 1980, they had everything in place they needed, and then the clampdown began, and it just progressed even more and more and more and more.
Yep.
That's that tunnel that Amina was talking about.
Yep.
That dark tunnel.
I agree.
You know, Maury, as you're saying all that, and you bring up about Kennedy and how you can look at it as an isolated incident, but when you step back, there's really a lot more to it. That made me think of the conversation that you guys were having on Wednesday with the Unfuck It discussion, and when Ben brought up about how they use compassion against us.
How they used to do what, Megan?
How they use our human compassion against us as a control mechanism.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like doing something that just triggers the people in their heart so much, like, oh my God, the fall of Camelot, and the young family, and the young boy, and triggering the heartstrings, so that we're so caught up in our human compassion that they can just whoop in with the control around us.
Yeah.
Look at New Zealand right now.
Exactly, Earl, exactly what I was going to say. Look at New Zealand. Boom, mass shooting. Oh, everyone feels so bad. Here, take my gun, take my guns, take my guns.
But isn't it people like us, our type of people, that immediately recognizes manipulation?
Yeah.
We cannot stand any emotional manipulation whatsoever. It's like we're born recognizing it in anyone.
Absolutely, because New Zealand is the perfect example that taking away the guns doesn't help, because on the other mask, there was somebody who could defend himself because he had a gun.
And no one's talking about that.
And there were less casualties than in the others. So it's a perfect example that to take away the guns is the worst thing they could do.
Oh,
well,
absolutely.
There was another one. There was one in the States that happened just last week. It was the same thing. Some mass shooting started, and someone pulled out a gun and went, yeah, boom, and killed the guy dead. Guess what? The media didn't tell that story. Never, never.
Yeah, totally. And the Australians swallowed it up when Port Arthur happened over 20 years ago. And it's just become more oppressive, way more oppressive in Australia. But it's interesting, Maury, you were saying the early 80s, you had your Uranus half return. So Uranus was opposite your Uranus's natural position. So you would have seen all this in the early 1980s, hitting the top of your chart.
Well,
Man.
I don't know how to
it would have been a very big awakening for you in 1982, between 82 and 86.
Well, let me tell you, a lot happened to me in that time frame too. I don't need to go into the details, but a lot happened to me in that time frame.
I'm hearing you. I'm getting that right now. I'm in my early 40s and it's hitting me, and it's just like, what am I in for, Maury?
Well, if you'll take my word for it, the old you is going to be unleashed, and the new you is going to flower. How about that?
Okay, I'll take it as a good thing.
I'm not saying it's going to be an easy ride,
It
No,
ain't
it's not going to
necessarily
be
easy.
easy.
but it's worth it in the end. Let me tell you, it is worth it in the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of change happening, that's for sure. But I was saying in the chat before that we're seeing glimpses of this new future. We're seeing glimpses of, new healing technologies and sound frequencies and changes. And I suspect once we have this major conjunction happen early next year, science is going to be tipped on its head completely.
I feel it too, without all
Too
your
much proof.
specialized knowledge. But I agree with you 100% on
Yep.
that.
And we're seeing glimpses with the CIA documents, Adam and Eve stuff, and breakthroughs in technology there. I think it's just going to come crashing down very soon.
You get so much momentum behind it that they can know, as with everything, it's the typical template. They deny, ignore until they no longer can, and then they have to take it on. And if you get enough people talking about these things, they have to roll with the punch somehow in order to maintain their own legitimacy. Right?
It's like the amniotic fluid just flowing out, and they can't stop it, and then the baby comes, and we're in the reality.
Danny, on what you just said is true. There's something I've kind of maintained consistently. There's two programs running at the same time. They look alike. They look identical. So if you don't really look at it, there's only one. It's them doing their thing. But there's another program going that sees a bigger picture. Effectively, what I want to predict is all of the crap that we've seen leading up to right now is not done with. There's going to be more narrowing in on people, more restriction. But at the same time, it's leading towards that explosion where it's going to go outward.
Yeah, I agree.
You see that? Yep, and so in the short term, and I mean, I'm talking through this summer even maybe, we're going to see even more bullshit.
Oh yeah.
But
I only see it ramping up. I only see it ramping up from here.
Me too. But just like anything else, it's going to explode on itself. Or it's going to restrict itself so much that the pressure behind it is going to explode it too, and it's self-destruction in the end.
Yep.
The system is built to self-destruct. If you step back long enough and look at society, and you know this too, I know you do.
And that's the cycles, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's the cycles. Well, darlings, I got to let you go because it's 2:00 in the afternoon, and my boys are starving to death, apparently. They're starving to death. Apparently, they forgot how to work a toaster. Go figure.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I know, it's a terrible thing when they just forget how to feed themselves. I'm not even going to comment. Okay. I love you guys.
I love you too.
I will talk to you later. And yeah, the four of us going to sit down and have a little chit chat later. Okay. Bye, guys. I will see you all tomorrow night.
Bye.
Bye, darlings. Oh, wait. Hold on.
Bye.
Do you guys want to continue chatting? Because if you do, I have to make someone.
I gotta go.
You got to go. Amina's got to go.
How you placed, Megan? I will stay for a little bit, but
Okay.
it's already after 11 o'clock.
Well, I just made Maury the host. Maury didn't get asked. I just made him host.
I will fade fast.
I'll hang around a little while, Danny. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm
That's
leaving,
good,
and you guys can continue chatting.
That's good though, Dee, because last time when you I noticed how you made Maury the host last time, It's like I had mentioned to Brianna. It's like, she made Maury the host like well before she went off, before she left. It's like, yeah, I saw it, but you just didn't mention it. You didn't mention that you made.
I totally meant to say something, and then fuck, I gotta go, guys. Bye.
Thank you.